Oh, we have so much to talk about this morning with our Powerhouse Roundtable.
And so, introductions first, and we have a first-timer here today. Dan Sweeney is a reporter for the Sun Sentinel. He covers the state legislature and statewide political issues. We'll be gentle, I promise. Nadege Green is a reporter at WLRN Public Radio, formerly with the Miami Herald, who focuses on social justice issues. Mark Caputo is the Florida correspondent for Politico and author of the daily Politico Florida Playbook. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Thanks
Welcome,
for being
Nadege.
here.
Dan, great to have you here. Mark, let's just simply say the obvious, that what happened at FIU this week was horrendous, catastrophic, awful, grief-inspiring, and our hearts go out to the victims and their families. Now, having said that, let me ask you first, Mark Caputo, why in the world do you think that street was still open while they were doing stress testing, tightening cables, doing other things that potentially had could have caused this? We don't know what caused it, but they were doing things that might have.
I'm kind of handy. I built a deck by myself with a roof. I did not let my children anywhere near that until the thing was completely built and stress tested by me. Right. Why would you build a concrete structure across, what, 8 lanes of traffic?
Well, I think the next question after that is, whose responsibility was it to order the road closed? And there are all kinds of fingers pointing about that. Nadege, you were out covering that?
Actually, I didn't go out covering it, but we've been covering it in-house at WLRN. Yeah. But I think that's the entire purpose of the process, the accelerated bridge construction process that they took, is that it prioritized traffic so that it could continue to flow while they're doing this. Like, that was actually the purpose. Now,
that was during the building of it, at the side of the road there. But that wasn't, there's nothing in that ABC process that says you can't stop traffic while you're testing it over and in place.
They could have stopped it. They could have. The question is why didn't anyone ask?
Well, they should have, I guess.
And they had the right to do it. I mean, that was part of the deal with the Florida Department of Transportation, was they could ask a couple of times for Southwest 8th Street to be closed while they did construction or whatever they wanted to do.
I got to think traffic is like the only reason. I mean, traffic in Miami is notoriously bad. So, they're going to assume that nothing bad is going to happen and we can keep all the streets open and not have a traffic nightmare on our hands trying to put this bridge over there, and everything's going to work out fine.
Dan, you work in Tallahassee. You've been there the whole session. My impression from the get-go is the Florida Department of Transportation put out a memo on Thursday night or Friday morning.
Fact memo.
A fact memo utterly distancing itself from anything to do with anything. And of course, in the ensuing 72 hours, we find out, and as recently as Senator Marco Rubio at the press briefing last night, that FDOT was the managing agency and knew far more than it let on.
Sure. I mean, it would be hard to believe that the Florida Department of Transportation would have no hand in any major construction project involving transportation in the state. I mean, the idea that they had, had no idea what was going on with this, it would be hard to believe in the first place.
Well, here is Governor Scott Thursday night, first press briefing, quote, "It was not an FDOT project, it was an FIU project."
I mean, technically that is true, right? It's FIU's project,
that's true.
But FDOT is involved.
And deeply involved. In fact, let's hear that soundbite from Senator Rubio. Here he is last night out there by that collapsed bridge.
Federal transportation funds, dollars, are provided to states. There are local area projects in which a local area, it could be a small municipality, it could be a public university, do not have the in-house capacity to manage a project of a certain magnitude. They are then partnered with an agency that can. In this particular case, these federal funds, $16 million of federal taxpayer money, was assigned to a project in which the federal department, the Florida Department of Transportation stepped into the role as the managing entity for purposes of the funding.
And so, do they have responsibility for what happened?
Well, it sounds like everyone has responsibility, but in the end, the contractor has the ultimate responsibility. One of the things that we've heard from politicians for quite some time is let's have the private market do things. So we have these great design build projects, and we have ways to streamline the permitting process. So they build things quickly, and then sometimes something collapses, and then suddenly everyone says, oh, not my fault. Well, one of the things that I think Senator Rubio, Governor Scott, and a lot of politicians are going to be facing questions over are their contributions from the main contractor, MCM. It's a huge politically influential firm that was in charge of this.
And over $400,000, I think, over the last couple of years, given to various politicians, including a lot to Governor Scott and Senator Rubio.
And I would say that's at least.
That's a bare minimum. I mean, when you add up everything contributed by Munilla Corporation and under its name MCM and all 5 of the Munilla brothers, plus any Munilla that lives at the same address as those brothers, just on the state level, you're talking at least $350,000. And that's just at the state level. And then, of course, they're also major contributors to federal campaigns, and they're major contributors to campaigns in Miami-Dade.
Well, let's just say for the record, giving money, and as long as it's recorded and given to PACs, or they're following the rules, there's nothing illegal about that.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Of course, when you give that kind of money and you want to talk to a senator or the governor, they answer the phone.
And the question is did their political giving help get them jobs? And another question we're going to be asking is, how many jobs did they have, and did they properly staff this job, and did it have the appropriate work crews, safety guidelines and protocols were they followed? We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there are just so many questions about, like, how did this happen, right? That's what everyone wants to know right now, like, how. We know about the cracks on the bridge, but we don't know that necessarily the cracks on the north end contributed to this falling. We know about stress testing, and there's been back and forth over whether or not there was stress testing, because the Miami-Dade County mayor said that was happening, but then they walked that back the next day and said, well, actually, we can't confirm this.
I think the engineer at the Friday night press conference with the one who came out with the schematics of the bridge explained that there was indeed stress testing on one particular cable toward that north end. So that I think is now a public fact to add to the narrative. Yeah, but Dan, the narrative as it stands is now all focused on that north end of the bridge. So as far as we have so far, we have workers who heard a crack. We heard the stress testing on the north end. We saw visually the north end come down. Does that tell us anything yet?
I mean, I'm not an engineer, so I don't know that necessarily the stress test immediately led to what happened, but I do think that there needs to be a lot more look at whether this was the construction firm involved, MCM, or whether this was an inherent design flaw from the people that actually designed it, which was not MCM. So what role those two corporations had in leading up to the accident.
Yeah, well, we also have to find out the role that the FIU Engineering School and its Center for Advanced Accelerated Bridge Construction played. But we'll come back and we'll talk about FIU, the impact on that great school, in a minute. Stay with us.